Hi guys, Dre here, and for the second time in 3 videos, I can't believe I'm saying this. I really don't want to make this video, but unfortunately, given recent events, I feel like I'm only doing due diligence if I make a follow-up to the Drebrief video that I made on Tuesday. On that video, I talk at length about Lewis Hamilton and the commission that he's setting up to investigate diversity in motorsport. But there was also an opening segment, the first maybe 2.5 minutes, where I talked about Bubba Wallace and what happened in NASCAR over the course of this past weekend. Now, for those guys that don't know the situation, Talladega was they were meant to be racing in Talladega that weekend. On Sunday night, the race was postponed till Monday due to rain. Overnight, in Bubba Wallace's garage stall, a noose was found. Now, I don't care what you tell me, I'm going to call it a noose throughout this video, because if the FBI and NASCAR are referring it to that in their statements, I will too. If you don't like it, tough, as far as I'm concerned. Now, what we saw in said video was a symbolic act of unity between NASCAR, and let me point out as well, because a lot of people have said, oh, Bubba Wallace was just trying to cash in or take this story and roll with it, or try and get publicity out of this. This idea was initially started by Jimmy Johnson in the wake of the news that had gone through on Sunday before we got the full story. It was Jimmy Johnson's idea to push Bubba's car out onto pit road, and everybody else followed suit. It was the other driver's idea. This wasn't Bubba going to everyone and saying, this is what we should do. No, it was everybody else's idea. Hence why the emotion, I think, that came out of Bubba was genuine. Because this was not a plan that he orchestrated. But the unfortunate timing of the video on Monday, and then obviously Tuesday's subsequent release, was that the FBI concluded its investigation into the alleged hate crime. It was not a hate crime. The reason being is because that noose that was in the garage had been there since October 2019, the last time they raced at Talladega. And as a result of that, combined with the knowledge that NASCAR only gives out garage stalls based on points and hence is random, Bubba could not have been a deliberate target for that attack. We now know more details about the situation in the coming days since. Turns out it was a member of Richard Petty Motorsports' crew, or Bubba Wallace's team for the number 43 car, that had initially found the noose in the garage. Said member of staff had checked every other stall in the garage just in case this was a coincidence. It was not. It was the only garage stall shaped like a noose on its garage door. So he had informed his crew chief, the crew chief had informed security, security had informed NASCAR, NASCAR called the FBI. They felt like Bubba Wallace had been threatened, basically. They felt like he was threatened, it was an alleged hate crime, they treated it like it was a hate crime, and they called the FBI. The FBI sent 15 agents down the next morning to investigate, and that was the result of their investigation. Now, of course, retrospectively, people went back on my video a couple of days ago to try and dunk on me in the comments by saying, oh, look, this wasn't a hate crime, it must be a hoax, when it's not a hoax either. Bubba had no idea this noose was in his garage until a member of his crew found it, and NASCAR had informed him that, yeah, we found the noose in your garage and we're checking it out right now. People wanted to be cynical towards Bubba Wallace. They compared him to Jussie Smollett, which is just so problematic and sums up a lot of culture right now, where we focus on the one time a black person faked a hate crime compared to the hundreds, if not thousands, of incidents in American history where genuine hate crimes have actually happened. Focus on the one rather than the 99, because of course people jumped on this wagon, and this was not some small vocal minority. This was clearly thousands of people that did not believe this, because I've seen parody accounts of Bubba Wallace that have had thousands of Twitter followers follow them over the course of the last few days. Urinating Tree, a massive popular YouTuber, called the gesture of pushing Wallace's car out on Twitter. He called it pandering. People did not want to believe this story. And that's what leads it up to this point, because NASCAR conducted its own internal investigation regarding that noose, and the results for it came out yesterday afternoon, which has led to me making this video. So I think it's Steve Phelps is his name, who's the president of NASCAR, came out and said that yes, the noose was in there in October 2019. The last people who used it was the Wood Brothers team. They do not know who fashioned the noose for the door key, or the garage door, basically. They don't know who did it, but it was shaped like a noose, and NASCAR had got on the phone and contacted every track that's on its current calendar, 29 of them, and checked every garage stall on the calendar to see if anything else was similar. Here was the results. They checked 1,684 garage stalls. And I'm getting this off Bob Pockris's Twitter account. I'm looking on my computer right now, so apologies for looking a little bit unprofessional here, but I want to get this absolutely on the nose. They checked the entire garage at Talladega. Nothing else was similar. They checked 1,684 garage stalls across 29 tracks. Only 11 had the pulled down tie rope with a knot, which is what everybody jumped on Twitter, all the conspiracy theorists that had jumped out about that this is normal, this has been an exaggeration. So that out of 1,684 garage stalls, only 11 had the same loop that we've seen on Twitter do the rounds via conspiracy theorists or other people that have dug up older videos of Talladega or dug up footage of garages previously, like from October 2019, as I mentioned. Only 11 out of 1,684 were tied that way, and the one that was like the noose that was in Bubba's garage was the only one that was done in that way. And for the record, I don't care what you guys tell me, that looks like a fucking noose. Any reasonable person would say the same. I don't care what you tell me. If somebody had walked into Bubba Wallace's garage and had seen that, I'd have reported it as a hate crime too. I work in a bookies full time. If someone had left a noose outside my door, knowing that I was the manager of that shop, which I am in real life, my full-time job is I work in a bookies. If somebody had left that on my desk, or somebody had left that outside my shop, or put it on the door, I'd be calling up my manager, my district manager, and I'd be saying, get down here, take evidence, call the police, and I am not working in this shop again until this is investigated, we find out who put this here, and I know it's safe to come back to work. Because I am taking that as a death threat. Anyone that knows the history of black people in America and worldwide and associates nooses with lynching, they are designed to break necks and kill people. I am taking that as a death threat, as far as I'm concerned. And I think any reasonable person would have done the same. I have no problem with the way NASCAR handled this. I think NASCAR did exactly what it was supposed to do. They invested it, they took it on the basis of good faith that it was a hate crime. And they should have done. Because according to NASCAR's own research, and it proves that they're a right to do this, that noose was not normal. It just wasn't. And that's disappointing to find out that that is not normal. So this is not this is a half-baked conspiracy theory at best to suggest that this is some normal loop. It's not. They checked the entire calendar. And that's what's annoying. NASCAR, the only even minor criticisms I've got of this situation was that NASCAR should have probably used the words alleged in its initial statement. And that's a harsh one. Phelps took full responsibility for that. But again, they investigated it like it was a hate crime. I can understand why they did that, as far as I'm concerned. And the other one was that Bubba Wallace went on The View and said that people that didn't think it was a hate crime were, quote, simple-minded. As far as I'm concerned, the people that took offense to that didn't believe him anyway, so why the fuck should Bubba Wallace care about those people's feelings in the first place? I'm gonna wait for all the facts to come out. If one of my friends came up to me and said that they think they were the victim of a hate crime, I would believe them, and if I didn't believe them, that person probably would no longer be my friend. And I find that disturbing that we don't give someone like Bubba the benefit of the doubt. And it's easy to forget in the heat of all this story is that, and this is the point I'm getting to here with the Bubba Wallace story, is that the whole thing's been a deflection from what I think the real problem is here. This was a powerful moment for the series, what happened at Talladega. Bubba Wallace's car being pushed out, if anything, is now even more significant. Because we thought he was the victim of a hate crime, and we didn't believe him. And then the sport, in spite of that, still rallied together and got behind this man, the sport's only black driver. Let's not forget, is arguably the most racially segregated sport in North America, and if not, the entire world. I understand and respect the fact that NASCAR is trying to diversify its sport. It's got a great diversity program, and I know it's making an effort from the top to try and improve the situation. It does not hide the fact that the sport has an ugly history when it comes to race. It does not hide the fact that it took only until 2 weeks ago for the sport to ban the Confederate flag. A flag that was happily being waved at NASCAR events for years. Decades even. The sport is going to have to at some point acknowledge its ugly history if it truly wants to embrace change. Because I don't care what you tell me, the sport was an enabler for racism. It was a safe space for racists. I'm not stupid. I know what the Confederate flag represents. It represents the fact that in the South, people were so angry about the possibility of losing their slaves, they were going to renounce their United States citizenship, be a traitor to their country, take up arms, and kill innocent Americans for the right to own slaves. Yes, it's a part of America's history. I don't think it should be celebrated. Because when you go to an event waving that flag, you're celebrating it. You're enabling it. You're endorsing it. You're letting that be represented. Yes, it's a part of history, but it only lasted 4 years. Windows Vista lasted longer than that. The sport bred this culture. The fact that this flag had largely been ushered out of America from a social standpoint, but NASCAR was one of the last places to follow up on this in June 2020 is embarrassing. And the Bubba Wallace story is deflected from the fact that this past weekend at Talladega, we had cars drive down to the stadium in protest, waving Confederate flags outside, knowing they wouldn't be allowed in, but they went down to protest and fly the flag by the stadium anyway. We had people organise a crop duster to fly over the stadium with the Confederate flag on it with a sign that said, "Defund NASCAR," which doesn't even make sense because it's not like the police. NASCAR's a privately owned business. It's not a federally funded organisation that's owned ultimately by the government. It doesn't make any sense. And yet, that was on a plane flying over the stadium with the Confederate flag on it. A direct protest. Amazingly, only the second most controversial crop duster flight this week in world sport. Amazing. Amazing how that turns out. But these were significant. This was a time of heightened racial tension because people, and a significant number of people, were lashing out at the sport. NASCAR is doing its best to try and move on from its racist background or its enabler of racist culture. And some of its own fans are saying, says who? That's what we're dealing with here. And that is a very ugly part of the sport that has now almost been squashed because of the Bubba Wallace story. And the fact that so many of its fans wanted Bubba to be the victim and yet also the fall guy at the same time. And it's sad because, it's, like I said, it's been a deflection from the real issue, and that's the fact that this sport's been a safe space for racism. I don't care what anyone says to me. I don't need to hear the other side of the debates here to have an informed opinion on this. It's the biggest myth of internet culture in 2020, is that I need to hear both sides. I need balance to have an informed opinion. It's bullshit. Flying the Confederate flag over a stadium is a clear protest and backlash to what the sport has done. I mentioned Richard Petty himself in the Drebrief video, and I mentioned the fact that he put his own health at risk to go down to Talladega this weekend and support Bubba, which was great and all, but this is the same guy that less than 3 years ago said if you take a knee during the national anthem, you shouldn't be in the country, and he threatened to fire any member of his staff that was caught taking a knee. And I'd love to sit down and ask Richard Petty, what changed? What changed in the last 2.5 years? Because you can't say it was hiring a black driver, because Bubba Wallace drove for you in 2017. He covered for Eric Amarola's injury. So you can't say it's because I hired a black man and I listened to him, because it wasn't that. You had Bubba drive for you in 2017, that same season in the Cup Series. He was a stand-in. So what changed? See what I'm getting at here? It's nice and all that he had the symbolic gesture, but it also leads to greater questions about the sport, the culture it's bred, and what said sport is going to do going forward. Because the unfortunate reality is that if NASCAR really wants to move on from its past and wants to have a new, diverse, progressive sport, it's got to address the fact that there's going to be a significant amount of fans that don't want NASCAR to change. They want to wave their Confederate flag without being criticised. They don't want to be approached. They want that older culture that they grew up watching and racing in. And that's what NASCAR is going to have to address going forward. And that was the point that I made in my Drebrief that I think a lot of people very conveniently ignored. I'm delighted that Bubba was not the victim of a hate crime. I'm delighted it wasn't a hoax. It was neither of those things. Ironically, situations like this are not black and white. They are varying shades of grey. We waited for all the facts to come out. The facts are now here. I don't think it's an unfair question, especially in the wake of all these conspiracy theories that came out, why Bubba Wallace's garage stall was the only one on the entire calendar in the entire country that was shaped like a noose, and there's no explanation as to why the Wood Brothers team had one of their members of the crew tie their noose like that on their garage door in October 2019. I'm glad that NASCAR is giving its entire staff diversity training, they're giving it sensitivity training and unconscious bias training to try and make sure this doesn't happen again. Unfortunately, the Bubba Wallace story has deflected away from the real issue, and that is the issue of the racial culture that's being bred in NASCAR. And I hope the sport has more difficult conversations and makes a lot more white folks uncomfortable talking about this story, because if they really want to embrace change, they're going to have to embrace their past to change the future. Thanks for watching.